So today we are going to take a look at not eins, but zwei beautiful vintage Oberheim OB-1s. Why have I got two? Well, because if you get the opportunity to borrow two at the same time, you either say yes or you say yes, and I said the latter. So I want to do a documentary about Oberheim at some point, so I will save the deep history for that, but let's start by taking a brief look at what the OB-1 is and from whence it came. The first ever Oberheim synthesizer was the Synthesizer Expander Module, or SEM, released in 1974. This was initially designed to pair with their digital sequencer, the DS2, but it then subsequently became the sound module for a series of wonderful multi-voice synthesizers, the 2-voice, the 4-voice, and the 8-voice, released in 1975 and 1976. The OB-1 was the first Oberheim synthesizer to depart from the SEM paradigm, although it shares a lot of electronics with the SEM. It was also the first ever monosynth to have user-programmable digital memory, which was achieved with primitive digital logic and a series of capacitive touch plates. Much more practical and convenient to work with, the OB-1 was also the evolutionary link between the SEM and the legendary OB-X, which came out in 1979. There was then later an updated OB-1A that had a matching OB-X livery. And those are all of the synthesizers that Oberheim made in the 1970s. But of course, the story doesn't stop there. It was only just beginning. But we'll save that for another time. Now, I wanted to use this video as an opportunity to do a public service announcement / rant. So I've had many people tell me that the OB-1 is the synthesizer that Ben Burtt used to do the voice of R2-D2 and is also where George Lucas got the name OB-1, which is absolute bollocks. Ben Burtt has been on file, on record, in interviews, including video interviews that are on YouTube, explaining how he did the voice of R2-D2 with the ARP 2600. Secondly, you can't even do the voice of R2-D2 with an OB-1. It doesn't have the architecture required. You need the much more sophisticated 2600. And what should be the final nail in the coffin is that Star Wars was written, filmed, edited, and released to the public before the OB-1 was even released, so the dates don't even add up. So it should be trivial to dismiss this, but you would be amazed how many people correct me about my assertions with Ben Burtt and the 2600. And if you're one of those people, you need to stop. Otherwise, I will come round your house with not one, but two Oberheim OB-1s, and I will use them to bat you round either side of your head. And then I will get a 2600 and give you a final bopping on the top of your noggin until your bonce cometh through the 2600 and you're left wearing it like an Elizabethan ruff. Stop it. Stop it. Thank you. So, what's the difference between an OB-1 and the SEM that preceded it? Well, conveniently, I can show you. So, very similar electronics, but implemented in a different way, and they sound a little bit different as well. So, both have got two VCOs. So, you can start with a nice, juicy pulse wave with some pulse width modulation. Very similar juicy 70s oscillators. This one is ever so slightly tubbier. Might be to do with where the initial pulse width is set. You then have a sawtooth wave, but there's a difference. So firstly, sounds really similar. Very slight difference, but this one has wave shaping. You can go through to a triangle wave and back, and you can actually modulate that with the LFO or on VCO2 with the envelope as well. So that's the first difference. You can't do that on an SEM. They then both have noise. Pretty self-explanatory. Now, a massive difference is that the OB-1 has a sub-oscillator on not one VCO, but both, which is insane. So, sawtooth wave, sub-oscillator, another pulse wave, and another sub-oscillator. Pretty ridiculous. You can't do that on a single SEM, but of course on a 2-voice there's two SEMs, so you can do something equivalent. but that's the first major difference. So the next massive difference is that there is cross-modulation on the OB-1 VCO2 into VCO1. That's simply not on the SEM. So you can get some absolutely disgusting sounds out of this, which you simply can't do on the SEM. Next up, they both have your classic 70s oscillator sync. Lovely. And then really the final difference is that the SEM has continuously variable mixing of the waves, where the OB-1 has switched mixing. So you can just do on, off, or -3. So it's pretty limited on the mixing front. So the filter, like the SEM filter, is an OTA design, but it's implemented completely differently and with a different sound. So on the SEM, you get that continuously variable low pass to notch to high pass, and then switchable over to band pass. This guy, low pass only, but you can switch over to a 4-pole slope as well, whereas this is always 2-pole. So we're going to compare the low pass, because that's the only thing that's comparable, and you'll hear there's still quite a difference with just that. So the obvious difference is, firstly, you'll notice I had to turn 2 filter knobs. One down here, and then another one here. Those sort of work in conjunction with one another. One's sort of a performance control, and the other's sort of the filter setting itself. So that's slightly unusual. The next thing is with the resonance, up until maybe sort of 3/4 of the way round, wonderful. And then when you get to about there, which is about 85%, it just starts to whistle. Which is really, that's what most filters are like. It's the SEM that's the exception to the rule. One of the reasons why it's like the best filter ever, or one of the best filters ever, I should say. Because, 100% resonance sounds the best. It's kind of nuts, really. Another thing is, I'm sure you heard, when the resonance was really pushed up, you hear the stepping. There you go, and that is because it needs digital values for the patch memory, so that's another difference. It's only when you're manually stepping, you don't hear it when you're applying an envelope. But that's another difference there on the filter. And to cover it off, let's do a quick 2-pole, 4-pole comparison. And 4-pole. Push the resonance on that. Even more stepped, you can really hear it on that. So it's a deeper slope. It's 24 decibels per octave rather than 12, but it just gives you a little bit of a different flavour. And it's worth noting that there are more differences. The OB-1 has more wave shapes in the LFO. It's got that distinctive performance paddle. It's got ADSR envelopes instead of just ADS. It's got a fine tune for the filters. There's actually 3 cutoffs and more, but I think that level of detail is superfluous for the purpose of this video. So whilst I had this amazing opportunity to borrow 2 OB-1s at the same time, I thought, what could I do with them? And it suddenly dawned on me, hang on, what about if I got my own Oberheim 2 voice, which gives me 4 voices, and my Roland System 100M 4CV polyphonic keyboard, and made a makeshift 4 voice. So let's see what that sounds like. So the answer is that they sound absolutely divine. What wonderful sounding synths. They're really basic. They don't do all that much because of the era they're from, but it's just such a wonderful sound. No effects, no processing. It's just, straight to the heart, isn't it? But the problem with these wonderful synths is that they didn't make very many of them at all. To illustrate the point, these two are serials number 242 and number 5. I don't know how many they made, but probably only a few hundred. I've never seen serial 5,000 or something like that. So you're very unlikely to encounter them. However, there is an official Oberheim plugin version of the OB-1 made by GeForce Software. So let's do a little back and forth between the software and the hardware. So I'm not surprised that Tom Oberheim trusted GeForce Software to do the official Oberheim plugins, because they do an amazing job of those. They're not the only company who does amazing plugins. There's others I've featured on this channel: Softube, Yuhi, Roland, and many others. This isn't a GeForce plug. They don't know I'm making this video. But what I can hear is it's not absolutely identical. You can't tell them apart. There's no differences. But what is reassuring is when you put them side by side, the software with the coveted original hardware, the software sounds bloody good. And they really do a marvelous job with their plugins. So hats off to GeForce. If you like the sound of this, I did do a sample pack of this a little while ago, which is up on my Patreon. Thank you to my patrons for their ongoing support. And of course, thank you to you for watching.